fewer still ponder the long-term outcomes of removal. For the Cherokees, Creeks, Chickasaws, Choctaws, and Seminoles, the so-called 5 civilized tribes, establishing new communities in Indian Territory meant joining a pitched battle for power along the western frontier. Towns sprang up, then disappeared, in rapid succession. Rival factions of mixed and purebloods vied for dominance, creating tribal policies that were quickly struck down by a federal government and its local commissioners that limited the autonomy promised to the tribes as an enticement to quit their native woodlands in the east. Fragile coalitions were overlaid by shifting military alliances during the Civil War, sparking friction among tribal clans, mixed bloods, and opportunists of every stripe. Individuals as well as bands of Indians switched sides, sometimes back and forth. A dizzying series of hastily drafted treaties were penned and discarded as less formal pledges were sworn by ragtag bands to self-appointed leaders. Skirmishes with and among Indian raiders threatened the promise of a peaceful coexistence on the Western Front. 57 years after the Indian Removal Act, a further master plan emerged to address America's uneasiness with the indigenous people in their midst. To accelerate the assimilation that officials deemed a prerequisite to full citizenship in our burgeoning democracy, tribal lands were parsed into family units to farm homesteads in imitation of white settlers. The year was 1887 when the allotment era began. It would end in 1934, leaving behind the refuse of broken promises, racial divides, and tribal shifts that are little understood and for decades were scarcely touched upon in our historical canon. My people remember. I will tell you who we are. Honoring voices. I remember being roused from sleep in the middle of the night for our journey to Oklahoma. The car had been packed at the end of the previous evening with provisions to minimize the need to stop, fried chicken and biscuits for Dad, and a small pail for the child who might have slowed us down at a gas station's restroom. Our vehicle was already running as we stumbled down the front steps swathed in our warm bedding against any early morning chill. Drowsily, we tumbled into the back seats. The goal was to make the trip from Detroit to Veneta in 19 hours, or as close as we could to record time. Dad always tried to best our previous dash down home for Easter, or Thanksgiving, or Christmas, as he honed his strategy for arriving by nightfall. No matter the time of year, the weather, or the length of our stay, an early start was essential. With little traffic as we exited the city, Dad's well-tuned car hummed along, making it easy for us to fall asleep again, a mass of young limbs quieted by the still of night. The smell of coffee from the big silver thermos might awaken us sometime after daybreak. By then, we'd be well on our way in our mission to be home, really home, with the folks my parents revered. It was as though they had been torn away from the source that gave them their sense of place in the world, from a veritable Eden. Their kin were the very sweetness of life. As children, we did not doubt. In examining that strong tie to the land of their origins, I now understand how little of the warmth and competence that they enjoyed there was reflected in the wider world they encountered beyond the family fold. Little did we realize the extraordinary lives our forebears lived, or how hard it was to go home again. Dad's father, Joseph Davis, had been a veterinarian whose neat house, gardens, and chicken coops exuded both order and bounty. Grandpa Crugy, my mother's father, was loved for his humor and warmth. Hunting, riding, and roping skills made him legendary. Make no mistake, these men, their wives, the lives they created, were the whole package. Exactly what that package meant, who and what these people were, and what the land meant to them, would lead me to take my own trips back to Oklahoma. In doing so, I uncovered a numinous path leading from the allotment era to the present. It is a path that has enriched my understanding of racial diversity, and through that greater knowledge, endowed me with a calling to share the histories of these families with those who seek a deeper authenticity about race in America. I am tasked with telling you who we are. If this story is viewed as a sentimental yarn about the old days, then let it take its place among those that crowd our recent history, though few